like to welcome everybody to our December school board meeting. Call the roll, Mr. Bassler.
Mr. Jewell?
Present.
Mrs. Lanehart?
Here.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Dunkman?
Here.
And Mr. Moore?
Here. Stand and join us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hook for program recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell. Got a couple of our directors here, just to kind of give you a real brief program update. First, Karen McKinley for curriculum. I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you. I've had the pleasure of meeting a few of you in the last couple of weeks, so thank you for allowing me to be here this evening. Just to give you three really quick things that are happening in the world of curriculum and gifted that I wanted to do. And they're evidence of leadership that is being shown by the building principals and Mr. Hook in terms of the investment in helping us achieve higher report card scores, which is obviously just what we want to do, to have our students show what they can do. The first one has to do with a K-3 reading guarantee. We discovered through research that we did with Mike Milner and Shane Estep that Carlisle was using a different strategy focus than some other districts were, and it was causing us to have not necessarily the results that we wanted to have, even though we were doing the same type of things and providing the same level of education. And so as part of that, we researched and found a different diagnostic tool to be able to use that better mirrors the actual tests that they're going to be using. And they've also included more students in the intervention process than they had previously to try to address that. And that was something that was brought about through the efforts of Mike and Shane, and I was happy to participate with that. The next thing is with the gifted service plan and how we do services. When I was investigating the service plan, I realized that there were opportunities for us to be able to provide service and get credit for what we were already doing that wasn't reflected in our current service plan. So there's going to be some minor modifications that will actually allow students to get gifted services in some general education classes because the teachers are already receiving the gifted education professional development, which is the requirement. So it's not going to be anything additional for training for the teachers at this point. So the buildings that already have teachers that are getting the training, we're going to go ahead and include them at this point. We do have a building that we have teachers that aren't all doing gifted classes and gen ed classes at the same time. So we're not going to go there just yet. We want to investigate how that might fit in a little bit more, but we're going to go ahead and pick up the other buildings. So that'll be coming your way in January for you to take a look at. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was some instructional strategies that we are looking at. We're trying really to take a look at where education is going and how to be more engaging in the classroom. Two things that we have been embracing here in the last year and then currently. One is blended learning, which takes the technology or computers and uses it to help facilitate having almost like another teacher in the room. It frees up the teacher to be able to use small groups and be able to provide more feedback instead of standing in front of the classroom and lecturing. The second one is something that several of our teachers just recently attended a seminar on. It's called the GRID method, and it's based on mastery-based learning. So as a student shows mastery or 80% mastery of a concept, then they move on to the next more difficult concept. So what that does is it allows students to move at their own pace, but it also makes sure that they don't have any holes in the knowledge base that they need going down further. So those are the three things that are really taking place here in the gifted and curriculum world, and I'm excited to be part of the Carlisle Indian team and look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Next up, Gail French, our Director of Food Service, and give us a update there.
We've had a great fall. We did a Grandparents' Day, and that went over real well. And then we turned around just a couple weeks later and did Thanksgiving Day, and we had such a good turnout for that and such a positive experience for my staff and for myself that it was a great time. We are fully staffed, which is always a wonderful thing when you're working with the food service end of it. We are being audited, and the audit will take place, the on-site audit will take place on January 31st. So that's what our department is gearing up for right now, getting all the things that need to be in compliance all together and ready to go. But we're doing real well, and I'm with Karen. We got hired about the same time. I'm excited about being part of the Carlisle team, and I know this is a transition for the board. I want to thank you all that serve, that you do that, and for those going off, thank you for the time that you have spent with us, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Certainly appreciate these ladies and the direction that they've helped both of those programs, those departments, giving some valuable leadership there. So again, thank you so much for that. So that's all I have.
At this time, if we have any visitors that wants to make a comment, then we'll move on to the treasurer's report. Mr. Vassar.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jewell. One quick non-action item, my favorite subject, the audit. Auditors have returned, hoping to be done next Wednesday, so right after Christmas. Finish up hopefully this week. Last day here is hopefully next Wednesday. Won't be completely done, but their on-site stuff will be complete and finish up the report, which at this point is a small report. Not much of a report, so hopefully it stays that way between now and then. So that's kind of where we are audit-wise. Everything's looking good on the audit. Just always on the edge of my seat, just never know when something comes up, but not anticipating anything. So action items for the month. We need to approve our minutes from our last board meeting from November 27th.
Need a motion?
So moved.
First by Mr. Dunkman,
Second.
second by Mrs. Lanehart. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Abstain.
And Mr. Moore?
Abstain.
And next is the financial report, which is part of your packet. Again, broken record. Things are going along well, no true surprises. Trying to do our best to stay on top of all of our bills, which seems to be going pretty well. As far as revenues coming in, again, I'd like to report on a whole brand new bunch of revenues, but the good news is the revenues we're anticipating are the revenues that we have been expecting. So
Nobody's hit the lottery lately?
nobody's hit the lottery, nobody's knocked on the door to want to donate a whole bunch of money for any type of projects. But the good news is the money we were anticipating, we are receiving. And as far as expenses goes, again, no real surprises. Hopefully we don't have any large expenses in our buildings that we're going to inhabit for 2 more years.
Yeah.
We'll do our best to piece it together and move on. But as of right now, all looks good. So any other questions about financial report?
The only one thing, have you heard anything lately on the property at DP&L over?
Nothing new on the property at DP&L other than there is no resolution to it yet. I'm expecting in the next 2 weeks to see another appeal, because they have to file an appeal every year. So I'm expecting to see an appeal from Dayton Power and Light, again, just for this tax year. If I don't receive that, then maybe something's up. But,
Yeah.
for the last 3 years, they've put in a tax appeal, 4 years, 2 years. They put it in at the end of December for the following year.
Okay. Need a motion?
So moved.
First by Mr. Moore,
Second.
by Mrs. Lanehart. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart?
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
And Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Thank you, that's my report for this month.
Thank you. Now I'll turn it over to our superintendent for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell. First in non-action items, just let you know that we've completed our educational visioning process. That was about a 4-week little thing, not a very little thing, it was a big thing. With our architects, we had 40 individuals that gave up a couple of hours every Wednesday since the Wednesday prior to Thanksgiving. Really want to thank them publicly for just everything and their willingness to step up and just be a part of this process. The educational visioning responsibility was to look at how education is delivered in the 21st century and how that would impact the physical structure of the building. It was led by our architects, one of the architects within the firm that's what he kind of does. But it was really interesting to watch that whole thing kind of lay out. I appreciate Brian and Tammy for serving on that role. In that role, we had students, we had teachers from all grade bands, we had parents from all grade bands, we had Molly was on it, we had some representatives from the business community as well. It was a pretty good cross-section of people, and it was really interesting to see the themes that came out. We will have a written report that I'll present to you as well from the firm, kind of bringing it all together. It's some pretty abstract thinking when you first start off, and then as you start down the path, you see how it is so impactful in the building because you've only got so much square footage. So how do you utilize that square footage appropriately to deliver the best instructional methodology that you can? So it's critical, and one of the things we reminded everybody when we started it is, this is important because this isn't about the next few classes that graduate. This is about the next generation or two or more. It's big. So you get one shot to do it. Let's make sure we do it right. And I just cannot tell you how impressed I was with everybody and the work that they did. It was really refreshing, exciting. A lot of things are moving on. I know our architects are working hard at it. From this point now, we have also moved forward with our CM search, our construction manager search. That is shortlisted down to 3 companies. We met last week just basically to answer any questions that they have, tour facilities, etc. Their proposals are due into the state, I believe on the 27th. I might be off a day, but I think it's the 27th. We will be doing a formal interview. Mr. Jewell will be representing the board on that, along with Dan and myself, and along with the state, and our architects will be involved with that as well. And so as soon as we get back, that should be completed, okay? And so this thing just keeps gathering more and more steam and momentum, which is exciting. It's a fun time. So I know we don't see any ground broken out there, but trust me, it's a lot of stuff's going on.
I get asked every basketball game. I was thinking about just taking some stakes out there and drive it, just move them around every so often.
Move them around every once in a while.
Yeah, we had people watching traffic flow, the other day, just kind of watching how the flow on Jamaica is. And I said, tell you a couple of times, 4 times a day, you can hit it. And, just make sure you're not in it if you don't have to be. So, but that's all part of what they're doing, creating the traffic flow and traffic patterns. So a lot of things are going on right now. very shortly, checking where all the pipes are and all the underground utilities. One of the unique things that we have that is going to be in front of these construction managers is we're not on a different site out in the field where you don't have to worry about what's underneath. You know, we've got a high school and we've got a stadium in between on both sides of this where the new site's going to be. So prior to them getting very far with groundbreaking, you got to relocate everything. You've got to make sure the service isn't going to be impeded because we can't stop school. We have to keep moving. So a lot of stuff is happening, and will continue throughout the winter, as well as more specific community involvement in terms of like specific types of classrooms, locker rooms, science rooms, music rooms, you know, rooms other than just general ed. So got a lot more to do there and with input. So we'll be moving along pretty good. So it's exciting, and we'll keep trying to update it on the website as we get more information to share. And that kind of is the non-action items. So with that, I'll kind of move forward into action items. Under B, under 1, general business, first reading of the policies that are listed below. Virtually all of them are reflecting the changes in current law, and really there's nothing dramatically different. A lot of it is a lot of wordsmithing to accommodate new laws. So anyway, I need approval for A for that. Need approval for a resolution declaring it a necessity to renew the tax levy. It's in excess of the 10 mil limitation. What that is, real quickly, is our emergency levy that we passed in 2013. Okay, we promised the voters that we would make this thing last at least 5 years. We have done that. We also believe that we can push it farther. We think that if we just stay the course, be smart with our spending, Dan and I both kind of believe that we can extend this quite a bit farther. The renewal by law goes back to the ballot on the May of 2018. Okay, this is will not increase our taxes, and I gotta emphasize this. This is not new money. It's money that's already being taxed. It's money that we're already in our current budget, in our current 5-year forecast. Okay, and if you've seen the 5-year forecast, we're projecting to still be in the black in 5 years now. We've got a governor's race coming up. We've got a whole lot of other things that impact us. But barring anything unusual or crazy, we believe that we can extend it farther. So we need that resolution to move forward. Again, that will be on in 2018, and it would start January 1, I guess, of 19. It would just be a continuation. You'd see no change in your duplicate based on this particular levy. Also, item C is a resolution basically approving the changes made by the Ohio legislature for just the class of 2018 with graduation requirements. Still have the normal stuff, and you still have to have credits, the normal credits. They had a little bit of a laundry list based on concerns across the state that when this all implemented, we might have some issues with graduation. We're on this. It's not a problem that we at least can anticipate, but part of the worry from the legislatures was the end of course exams, and being able to make sure that they had the points needed for that, for graduation. So This resolution basically affirms what the legislature has put into law for us. And it just helps us so we don't have to put it into policy. It's 1 year only, then it's off, okay? So I need approval for those three.
Need a motion?
So moved.
First by Mrs. Lainhart,
Second.
by Mr. Dunkman. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lainhart,
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
and Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
Moving on to personnel items, need approval for the extension of the treasurer's contract for 5 years, which is the appropriate thing to do. He does expire, so we do like to keep him around a little longer.
Yeah.
If we can.
Need a motion?
So moved.
First by Mrs. Lainhart,
Second.
by Mr. Campbell. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lainhart.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman,
Oh, you need an answer. Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
and Mr. Jewell.
It's in the mail. Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, moving right along.
We really do love you.
Sorry, you can go home tonight. It's all good now. Item 3A, need approval for Tim Young as our grounds worker.
Need a motion?
So moved.
First by Mr. Dunkman,
Second.
by Mr. Moore. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dunkman,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mrs. Lainhart,
Yes.
and Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
And my last action item, item 4 under supplemental employments for A, B, and C. Those are just supplementals that we need approval on.
Need a motion?
So moved.
First by somebody. Over there, I don't know.
Mr. Moore.
Pick who you
Ms.
want.
Moore, I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Lainhart. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mrs. Lainhart,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman,
Yes.
and Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
That concludes my
Okay. Anything on legislation report?
The state legislation has entered their winter or Christmas recess, so shouldn't be any new updates or any major developments until probably mid to late January when they come back into session.
Anything happening at the CTC?
The CTC met on December 12th at 6 PM. We met early for dinner. The culinary class cooked for us, and then we followed up in regular session at 7 PM.
Any old business? I don't know if this is new business or what, but I just wanted to take this time to thank Mr. Campbell for his time coming back and serving the board with us, and a lot of good experience with you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
And I'd like to mention too, the fourth grade had a wax museum this past week, and I think it was a big hit. Mr. Thomas did a great job on that with the fourth grade, and I just want to get, kind of give him a shout that everybody appreciated, and it was outstanding. I guess we'll move on to, we need a motion for select the president pro temp for January the 8th organization meeting.
So moved.
Well, we need a nomination.
Nomination.
We need to nominate Mr. Jewell.
Now we need, go ahead, Alex, I'll do it.
There's a first.
Okay, need a
I'll be
second.
Yeah.
Second by Mr. Moore.
So we have Mr. Bill Jewell as our president pro tem to start our meeting, January the 8th.
Okay. And we're going to have the tax meeting there too, right?
Yeah.
Are we supposed to mention that now?
Well, let me call the roll and get this voted
Okay,
in first.
we'll do that.
Mrs. Lainhart,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
And Mr. Jewell.
I guess I abstain on that, don't I, or what?
Yeah.
Well, congratulations anyway.
Yeah.
We can start the meeting now on the 8th.
Okay. Then we have the notice for the tax budget hearing for 2018 and 19 will be at 5:45 PM on January the 8th. And then the organization meeting will be at 6 o'clock after that. Now, I guess we need a,
I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
now I need a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
First by Mrs. Lanehart,
Second.
by
Campbell.
Mr. Campbell. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lahnhart?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Dunkman?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Jewell?
Yes.
Time is 6:26.